nó là tôi mua số sử nhất tôi tỏ state capital này, tôi xin tôi chọn được nó là để bảo được số nó là state capital, nó là mua công trình gọi on surrounding nhất được số nó thế, thì tôi xin nó ra một chỗ hỏng nó là nó. Tôi xin nhớ chỗ state capital. Nó giờ luôn trong cuộc chiến nhất cho họ sinh Wisconsin này Madison là nhất cho thành số to nó và bây giờ thành sau thì họ chỉ rằng là cái dòng chính nó nhất vấn đề chambers number all ok cái dòng nhất rồi ít thành số to làm gì thế so thì nó nhất cho họ cái dòng gì nhất trong để luôn chế capital là giờ luôn rồi luôn chế tuổi trẻ nhất trong luôn sang Wisconsin này vấn đề là tao đây này có bốn chế tao đúng không ok
이제 tao nó là mà món bao vậy đấy干嘛背着包去意大利？背着con đầu đùa con
gà lúa cái mảng gà lúa nhót trong này cái thứ gì rồi
Thank you for waving down there.
Hi, good morning. Nice to see you.
Sir,
Nice to meet you.
nice to see you.
nice to meet you.
And my wife Barbara.
Barbara
Sir. Hi.
pleasure meeting you Barbara
Nice to meet you as well.
just give me
bây giờ thì chỉ có bên một chính này
ồ bên tôi mà phúc kia đâu sao cái chuyện này cái rồi cái phúc cái đó rồi ngon đi dạ phúc kia rồi lấy cả đấy bây giờ đi chả dạ phúc kia thì
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Wisconsin State Assembly Chambers for this great commemoration of, I guess you could say, the second annual, since it was signed by the governor last May 14th. This being Hmong Veterans Day across the great state of Wisconsin. Let's try it again.
Technology is always great with it.
chỉ thân này phần ba bỏ nữa bây giờ được họ cao và chỉ nữa để có lưu minh mà khơi chịu bỏ bỏ về số lần số tụi nó nữa để họ cao chỉ
cái chuyện là người trong mỏ là cái cái tụt trâu
ok yeah ok đi
ở tụi cà phê này hả rồi
จิตในพลเจ้าก็จะในทหารในตำรวจข้าราชการว่าเชื่อเดือนนาโตลึกลับหรือก็จะจองใจบ่ย่อมได้จะหลอดจุยที่จะปุยจุยจะจะจุดจี
ลูกป้าเถอะ
อย่าลีนอโหกับหูกุตุจอนู่นน่ะยิ่งนู่นจริงๆว่าโหเซงวิสกาจินกับเนื้อนาโตสินไอ้ลาโปbây giờ chuyện gì cho chúng ta sẽ nhau thế cho tàu giải bây giờ lý này cho có lý ta này bồn có tụ kinh lợi để lúc nào biết tàu họ nó ta này bồn chờ có cho này ta hạn nhìn xong nhìn chế nhìn nó chỉ lo nhìn chế này cho được lần đó non đó hồ thế có cho này ta hạn lần đó non đó hồ con nó để chờ con nữa để cho có cho này ta hạn này tầm ruột nàyข้าราชการlà chỉ cho có quốc quân nàyวันนี้tàu cho biết chuyện được chơi đi sang chụp hình lần đó con nó để tôi tới một lời giả đó con đã lúc nào biết cho nên phần lúc ba nào giờ lúc ba chuyện chơi lòn được lúc còn không có cho giờ có giờ tu chỉ chơi lúc xưa nó giờ bắt đầu số giờ tu chữ lúc còn tu cho lúc này lúc chuyện chơi thì bây giờ 我跟我忙叫做，一路呢我找，路这里头我这个包，到在就了做，都要在这呢，有的路呢好路公公都找，被没路办呢，叫着个我自己，叫么，叫着个叫内ทหาร叫ข้าราชการ叫一组到个那个叫专注力，我那时候到路拉蒙了，找必须得接，有的他个我自己天呢，叫内ทหาร了么在路办呢，叫么有了呢，在那不呢。
ở do cái trồng nghề trồng gì cho cứ cho đi hiện nay cho trả cho không cho dư chứ xe giờ bây giờ cũng tốt trò đợi cái chuyện này một bạn có kia lúc cái chuyện mình cả nó là giờ tốt trò xin reward nhất đồ cái chuyện lo để thọ ta không bây giờ tốt trò all the veterans who served in the United States Armed Forces and those that were part of the C.I.A. Secret Army, please stand so we can acknowledge and applaud each and every single one of you for your service to our country. They should have what they don't know. Thank you, you may be seated. Although the governor is not here, because we know he's running state affairs, I'd like to acknowledge the Honorable Governor Tony Evers. To Senator Jerry Petrowski, I'm sorry if I'm butchering your last name, but my dear friend, and to all our elected officials who are here today, from the executive, the legislature, the judiciary, whether it be from different cities and parishes, to counties and the state. Welcome all to this wonderful ceremony that we are commemorating or celebrating the Hmong-Lao Veterans Day today here in the great state of Wisconsin. Today is not just about the recognition of the passage of this legislation by our state legislature here in Wisconsin, but it's also a reflection to commemorate a secret group of people that much of our country and our people, the American people, don't know about because it is still very highly classified, and the U.S. federal government has just barely begun to release small, minute details about the Hmong SGU Army. And the SGU is abbreviation for the name that the Central Intelligence Agency designated to the Hmong, and it stands for the Special Guerrilla Units. And this special alliance, this special relationship between the Hmong and in our country, the United States of America today, began in January of 1961. The Kennedy administration, at the authorization of President Kennedy himself, instructed the Central Intelligence Agency to formulate a plan, a scenario to counter communist aggression and contain the spread of communism in Southeast Asia. And somewhere in there, in those plans, the word Hmong came up. And the US government and the US officials had no clue who the Hmong were. But how did the US government and the US officials come across the Hmong? And the Hmong have established a reputation for themselves in Southeast Asia being very anti-communist, but a freedom-loving people. And our history dates all the way back to China, our ancestral homeland, where the Chinese didn't get along with us because they wanted supremacy over the Hmong, and the Hmong wouldn't have it. And so we fled China into other parts and other regions of Southeast Asia, primarily Laos, Vietnam, Thailand, and Burma. And it was there, in French Indochina, the colony at that time under the administration of France, in Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia, did the Hmong establish a strong alliance with the French, fighting what would become Ho Chi Minh and the Viet Minh down the road, a couple of years later. And when Indochina, Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos gained independence from France, they became independent countries. And again, the Hmong had to face aggression again. Whether we wanted war or not, it would come in one fashion or another to the Hmong. And the Hmong were a hill tribes people. And they farmed on whatever land was available. And they stayed up in the highlands where they found peace until communism would knock at the Hmong people's door. And going back to what I mentioned earlier, it was then President Kennedy who instructed the CIA to formulate a plan. And through the CIA, they sent a gentleman by the name of Colonel Belair to this remote landlocked country of Laos to find not just the Hmong, but one particular man by the name of Vang Pao, who would become not just a general of the Hmong people, who we call our George Washington, but who would become a leader, leading a cornerstone in Hmong history and transforming Hmong lives forever. And what I mean by that, for the better. And so in 1961, this ironclad alliance was formed. It was forged in what we call the first contact, in accordance to US government dossier, on January 10, 1961. And three simple ideas were birthed that day between Colonel Belair and my father. One was my father would lead the Hmong to rise in arms against the communist forces of North Vietnam and the Pathet, which is the communist Lao faction in the Kingdom of Laos. And one of those goals was to disrupt the communist supply lines along the Ho Chi Minh Trail that the North Vietnamese and the Soviets and the Chinese carved up through Laos to bypass the DMZ, which our friends who served in South Vietnam know very well. So the Ho Chi Minh Trail was carved through Laos to bypass that and send supplies to fight our American brothers and allies in South Vietnam. Two was for the Hmong SG to protect and defend strategic US military installation sites. And one shining example of that would be Lima Site 85. It was a United States Air Force covert military radar site perched up on a mountain called Pupati in the Kingdom of Laos, but it was approximately 160 miles just west of Hanoi. And it was established in 1966. But the North Vietnamese and the Soviet military advisors to the Communist force began to get suspicious. How were the United States Air Force warplanes like the B-52s, the F-117s, the F-104s, and the F-4 Phantoms still flying over the skies of North Vietnam in bad weather? And they were still hitting and striking strategic military targets with precision. So the Soviets began to become suspicious, and then soon enough, this military site Kupati, Lima Site 85 in Laos, became known to the communist forces. And they began to launch a 3-month-long raid against Kupati. So up on this perch of Kupati, you had about 19 US Air Force military personnel, and they were the only ones up there. But down in the ravine in the valley were the Hmong SGU, joined by some Lao Special Forces and Thai Karu from Thailand, allied troops protecting Kupati. So the North Vietnamese would get very clever. Instead of fighting combat to combat, face to face, they dug holes underneath the ground, and they eventually sent commandos scaling up the side of this mountain and launching attacks from the top. And then in March of 1968, the North Vietnamese deployed 2 very old Soviet Antonov 2 biplanes, relics of the World War II and World War I. And they flew in all the way from Vietnam to Kupati. An American Huey helicopter, commanded by American forces, armed with AK-47s, managed to take down one of the fixed-wing Soviet aircraft from a helicopter. And that would go down in history as the first time a helicopter or a rotor wing took out or down a fixed-wing aircraft. History is made there. Unfortunately, Kupati was lost. And the end of Lima Site 85 came to an end. But out of that, heroism also rose. A young man from Hamburg, Pennsylvania, age 35, Chief Master Sergeant Richard Earthbark, was one of those of the 19 up on Lima Site. And before he tragically lost his life, he managed to save some of the wounded, his fellow comrades, others who were unable to be rescued. And when he was being loaded onto the helicopter, one of the last persons, the helicopter drew enemy gunfire, and he was hit and killed. His brother in arms, who he saved, eventually would be flown out to South Vietnam or Thailand, where they recovered, but they had to find the tragic news that their hero had lost his life in the process, along with many other Hmong soldiers protecting Kupati. But it did not go down in vain. 14 years later, after Chief Master Sergeant Richard Eckberg died, his family was told that he was lost in a helicopter accident. It wasn't until 1998 did the US government declassify the full story to his family, that he served in a covert operation directing US warplanes and Allied warplanes over the skies of North Vietnam at Kupati. And he died with honor and bravery among many other people during that conflict. The United States government would award him, the Air Force, props. And in 2010, under reevaluation of the Obama administration, they would eventually award him at a ceremony posthumously given to him at the White House, the Medal of Honor. And that medal was accepted by his 3 sons. So as of recent, stories out of the Hmong SGU, what we're celebrating today, is not just a passage of the legislation, but everything that took place. And I know there's one more item that was the 3 main goals that the Hmong were set up to do. But let me remind all of us that no matter which city, which neighborhood, which community, which state we come from, we're all Americans today. And even though we may have our disagreements, our different ideological views, different philosophies, we all serve under one banner, and that is the Stars and Stripes. That is our freedom, that is our democracy, and that is our liberty. That the Hmong served a long time ago. And everywhere I go, I like to include in my statements and remarks, as a joke, but it's not a joke, that the Hmong became US citizens way before they even arrived on US shores. And that does hold true. And I say this today we may go about our own business of the day and the coming days and the weeks, that we may forget much, but let us not forget this day and our heroes, our veterans, who fought under our banner, our flag. Old Glory, the Star-Spangled Banner, it has many different names, but it is our flag. It is us, it is you, it is I. It stands for freedom, and it is a symbol of freedom all around the world today, the greatest nation on earth. Item 3, that the Central Intelligence Agency and the administration of Washington, D.C. assigned to my father and the Hmong SGU was to help rescue or save U.S. pilots who were intercepted, attacked, or shot down that were fortunate enough to parachute into Laos. And if they were fortunate enough to do that, the Hmong would still have to trek the forest, the jungles, the mountains, the hillsides, and enemy positions to get to those U.S. pilots. Many sacrificing their own lives in the process to save a few. Other U.S. pilots were not so fortunate and either fell into the hands of the enemies or lost their own lives. These were the 3 main tasks assigned to the Hmong, and the Hmong, about 300,000 total was the population of Hmong people in Laos at that time. And about 40,000 served in the army. And the numbers that we cannot account today, because it is almost literally impossible to account how many lost their lives. But for the Hmong, it was a huge toll. But it was a toll that would change our lives forever, because it was done in the name of freedom. And that was our key to the next step, which I'll get to in a bit. But going back to the U.S. pilots, right here in the state of Wisconsin, the Aviation Heritage Center in Wisconsin recently dedicated a T-28, which in U.S. Air Force standard, that's a trainer from the Korean War. But these were trainer aircraft that were converted into warplanes that trained Hmong pilots in Bangkok, Thailand, that were trained by U.S. Air Force pilots. And let me just read a name of a few gentlemen that were the U.S. military trainers to the Hmong pilots who taught them how to turn these trainer aircrafts into warplanes. Retired Colonel Gary Kodak, retired Major Mark Gunn, retired Captain Joe Lazine, retired Colonel Carl Lifka, and retired Captain Reverend Tim McKern are just a few testament to the legacy of the Hmong pilots. If you recall in my speech earlier, the Hmong before the war, we were an agricultural people. The men tended the farms, the women, the sons and the daughters would help. Then came the rise of General Vang Pao. And through his leadership, that's why we call him the George Washington of the Hmong people. He wasn't just a military commander. He used and seized that opportunity, as stated in the proclamation by the governor and read by our friend the senator. He used that leadership to build schools and hospitals. And in a moment's time, men who tended to the fields were flying fixed-wing aircraft. They learned how to fly planes before they knew how to drive a car. Can you imagine that, ladies and gentlemen? Women left the fields to become nurses and radio operators, and so on and so forth. And above all, they got to go to school under the leadership of General Vang Pao, which was a privilege before that to the wealthy and the elite only. So these were some of the positive contributions that our U.S. Hmong alliance enabled the Hmong to do, and that's why I call it a pillar or a cornerstone of Hmong history. And that is why we are also here today. Lionel Rosenblatt, who is in charge of Refugee International, who's a dear friend of all of ours, stated, and I quote, "If the United States owed gratitude to anyone in Southeast Asia, it would be the Hmong." Jerry Daniels, who was a CIA case officer, a very close friend of my dad, but he was the CIA attaché who was side by side with my father through thick and thin. stated that, before he passed, that I and other representatives of the U.S. government, to you the Hmong, that if you fight for us and we win, you all will be fine. But if you lose, we will take care of you. And that is precisely what happened. The United States of America became our new home. Men, women, children of all different walks of life from this mountainous landlocked country of Laos came to America. And if my father were here today, as leader and as father of the Hmong people, he would remind the Hmong people of our journey to get here today. And we should not take that for granted. He would say to all of us that we must continue to do our positive contributions back to society, which we are a thread or fabric of our societies in which we call home, to our communities, to our neighbors, to be law-abiding citizens, and to continue to work hard. Work hard, not just for the American dream, but for our cause of freedom. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I will end off my speech in Hmong because I know there are a lot of non-English speakers here, primarily the elders today. And it will resonate what I just said in English in Hmong. Ý chung là cái nên là ý chung gì họ cho nên cho nên cho tôi. Không nói chú say, giao cảnh cho nên errors. Hiện tại trong là trong phứ nhà lúc sân lúc khăn sự là lúc trong ta. Tàu có bê trả tây bảo trong hồ trả dài. Không nói họ là hiện có cho là bê trên mong nhập ô tô tròn là nó tổ. Là bê trên này một lọ hóa thì bê trên cả nó. Nên sẽ là một chế độ gì là tên chỉ tên gì làm sai tên chỉ mình cả nó giờ tôi有些个给多跳都被准梦不了不特老吵的事多比如能切的我得只mình cả nó lớp từ xa xôi cho nên cái gì để cái tin chỉ bắt đầu học thi y và nâng thao nặng tuổi lúc nâng giỏi lúc giỏi chỉ bảo ta để chỉ bên mong có trong một trong chắc rồi giáo chỉ ở bên mà để bên tầng bên tầng sự tròn để chỉ bên tiền những cái gì họ chân bên chỉ là không bên cũng chờ bên dân chờ họ bên tua cho bên chờ qua mà ăn nànวันนอมเขาคนเยี่ยมคนเสียหมกกงวันเบชักหลังคุณเดียเต็มอย่าเป็นมองจะมองยิ่งวีให้เดียเป็นว่าเราเนี่ยเราสีเทียอีตัวเราขยับเดี๋ยวเราจะดูข้อตัวเป็นสิ่งเป็นด่านสองแต่มีตัวนิ่งใช้รอบแต่ที่นี่เราโลจิ包造แต่ที่เราโลจิ包造เป็น要好，这就在丢了啊！对于都没有，乱到哪里包，还对啊，被定的被指被包对了了，对吧？被蒙，人家给你到都是肯定的啦，走路还能多，路还能多，走啦都敢多，走个热闹啦，就是被蒙，我当我查，我当我找，找被他们只找被这个人他妈，我找被对不对了那个，对了对只要我找。多拉都只有这里。半年前的你都明才，多找研究我家了嘛，被这都装梦下来，被这我就他读，等到了那他们那个啊，无证都只写上了，就是被你的被用了先。要那个要多知道，小不知有他报啊，不被知道。thì sự nung nói là nung bên có cho là thì bên mong trong cái nó cả ba bảo chế nhớ chờ tết chờ cho luôn nó xa cho nên cho nó cho tụi chó ở bên cũng không sư giờ bên cũng tàn họ bên có yên tàn họ mà để thằng nó bên cho này bên không giờ lên từ thì bên không tụi sự kiện thì nó yên vị để cho tụi cho này nó hẳn phải trong phải lâu cái trò cái sự chơi chỉ nhớ là bên mà bỏ cũng chết đó là tụi chúng tụi li đó bên không điểm không chỉ bên không thấy cho chỉ thân phân vào có xử lý qua cứ từ đây sẽ và tu từ đây sẽ tua những cho chỉ thân phân vào có lúc yên không yên của lúc nên mỏ của cầu trồng bỏ phủ bảo dụng để cho lên số tổng nó có bên không lúc nên chỉ nó nằm ở nhà đây chỉ có tên này giờ gì bên giờ cho mình bây giờ chỉ nhận không bên không bên rong đến nó nói từ hai năm tới nói tới chỉ ra bên bỏ rong có cho nó bên không bây giờ không do rong được tiền còn nơi giờ họ chỉnh kinh còn nơi giờ họ bây giờ khẩu sĩ khẩu cho khẩu trả bên không nên rồi là vấn đề bên trong khoảng đó cũng sang hoàn thành chỉ là ít tu nên thằng mình tên nói tên chính là senator Jerry Vang chỉ tu nên thằng mình lo yên nó chỉ lo sợ đi nó phải sự cố lo sắm mà nó trái chay nó cho nó bên trên muốn nó mê của blog nó cho nó bên muốn nó bên một cái em có chút sinh chấp lời cho nên các chị em tự tin được không thể gì để trong xe chấp lời cũng đòi để trong xe không nào cũng chơi luôn nhau vẫn của tiêu lòng của tiêu lòng hiện ta họจะพูดแล้วค่ะจะเชื่อของเราอย่างนี้เรายิ่งจะอยากไปจิตในคนละพอจะเริ่มไปสิ่งกับพูดแล้วกันจะเช่าไปมุ่งนั่นก็จงนี้หน่อยเนาะไปจิตนั้นก็เช่าอย่างนี้ก็ไปมุ่งนั่นจุดมันใหญ่หาใหญ่ต้องสุดไปจิตผู้ปราบไปจิตผู้ปวดไปเรียนจิตปวดชั่วพอนายวิทาผู้จันโตลีกูหายเราไปกินในจังหวะยาโตจะลาก็อยากเอาได้เป็นจะมีตู้ยิงชายรอบนอกเตียงกันแล้วกันแล้วก็พวกช่างทับพาตัวในคนว่าปอลูกการที่เจาะเป็นมุ้งอยากเอาได้สิต่อเป็นมุ้งที่เป็นจอมนอนชุมนุมนอนขณะยิ่งอยากไปเจาะเป็นมุ้งส่วนที่ยิ่งในโน่นเนี่ยเราพิจูชุดขณะยังขยอเป็นสิ่งที่ว่าเป็นยังยอกูทอพอการทอในการเนี่ยจะสีจะตีเนี่ยจะรู้สึกรู้สึกจะเจ้าเราจะว่าพัฒนาชัวพัฒนาโลกจะต้านหอจะคือจะตีจะมองในหมู่คนเล่นส่วนตัวนี่是的是狗的周的叫给地域上要对嘛对处叫เราจะว่าจะหายเนี่ยรู้สึกรู้สึกเราว่าเขามา出席ยังมัวเย่งตัวไปจีนมองยังมัวเย่งตัวไปลงไปมองจะให้ตัวว่าตัวตัวปันตัวใช่ไหมอยากได้อยากเป็นเจ้าชายเลยมันจะช่วยจงเป็นตาคนจีนที่หนาที่จะให้รู้รงพอ了我中文，但是也等的只能到也占掉差很多知识，就被只能用了生活上层面。那个要说叫民族民才的是哪者也用了。内应的 history 用了 ，you are a part of history. We are making history. And we continue to make history in our country, these United States of America. And among our Americans. We are here, and we will do our share. We will contribute to the best of our ability. We still have a long ways to go. It's been turbulent and bumpy, but we managed to get this far. And I pledge, on behalf of all Hmong Americans, all 300,000 of us here in the United States, to work with our elected officials, to continue to do good to the best of our abilities as citizens of our great nation. And in freedom's name and liberty's cause, we will continue to march forward together as brothers and sisters. And I am honored and proud to stand before all of you in this great hall of the Wisconsin State Assembly, in this great hall, to represent my father, the late General Vang Pao. And I know his legacy and I know his teachings lives on in all of us. And we have great days like today, moments like this to remind us of what all of this is about. And it is about unity, respect, and familyhood. Familyhood in terms of communityship. And there are many other qualities and traits that I won't have enough time to list here. And I know senators and Senate back there this whole time. So thank you very much for the privilege and the time for inviting my family and I and all of the community leaders to be up here on this dais today to speak to all of you. Thank you very much for the invitation just to be present here. And thank you for being a part of our great family. And again, in closing, may God continue to bless all of our veterans, both active and those who are no longer serving in our armed forces. And may God continue to bless our American people, and may God continue to bless our country, these United States of America. Thank you very much.
funeral services.
Thank you. Thank you for your service.
Thank you for your words.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And with that, to say a few words, the director of the Wisconsin Veteran Museum, Christopher Kolakowski.
ขอในปอดตาละน้อยอยากแกงเฟิงเดี๋ยวจะลาดเส้นย้อนจุดในลูกคงเชนเอาซื้อที่เราใช้จอชมห้องวันโดยรูมุดยาตอนเด้ไปอยู่จอเตอร์แกให้รูลอนเดี๋ยวจะควรชิเส้นชัวตูก็เสด็จป้อจอเดียแกให้รูย้อนจุดในลูกคงเชนเอาแน่หอมมัวได้จีเทได้จีโอเคแต่สินะว่าจะกูตุ้จอเลยถ้าต่อละมือยังด้วนจอจว่าจีเน่งว่าอย่างเป็นตู้ยาวตุ้นเจอเกียย้อนจุดได้ว่านั่นแหละอันนี้ย้อนจุดได้ก็นอยอพอเลยจุดถ้าต่อละมือยังด้วนจอตัวนึง nhớ trong đặc nó chỉ lúc nói vậy lúc chỉ sinh nhớ trong học sinh Wisconsin tôi chỉ sinh là tàu dự lúc nào trong mong để là giờ cho mong lúc tiên chỉ nhớ trong sinh Wisconsin á.
It is all in the same cause. So we stand with them in full solidarity and community as well, and freedom will always prevail. So again, thank you. God bless you all.
Okay, now. Okay. Chả nó có sát tại lấy thay bây giờ nó có sát tại thế kia lấy thay cái này nó có đen lên hả?
Chơi có tí tôi lọt đó, đi lọt đó.
Thay vào cái xe nào để phải thay ở đây cho lấy một cái.
Cái gì lúc nào
cha và sẽ được chính tácต่อตัวชิดถ่ายยังน้อยจะchaแล้วจะ Wisconsin State Assembly นะcha nó nàyแล้วมันนั้นต่อchaที่หรือมั่วเขาว่า House cha ที่ Senate cha ที่คนนายก State Assembly cha
cái to lắm
chỉ cho nó một cái gì nào có phải cái này cô liệu cho là xí quả nhớ nhìn nè giờ đi cơ ở trong đâu à ô liệu ok
khi nóมีการหลอกchứng mà như chưa nó có thể có
đây đó cái gì nó muốn sử dụng ta chỉ nó muốn chơi nữa lúc này những chi sinh nhật cho họ sống Wisconsin đó nơi chúng ta mua có
nơi lấy tiêu hụt vì cáiตัวnào thả là để đi lọt trong đi chợ để vì để chạy qua lần là về bây giờ mua gì xỉa rồi mà thì cái là do họ bây giờ tại tàu bây thì tàu lấyตัวnào bây nhau bây cái là ở chỗ trong đi chợ nó về tụi nó thì bây giờ tàu mua
ok nó hay phải nhắm phải rồi cái này
dạ chỉ là tàu mua
แต่สิ่งนั้นเนี่ยเกี่ยวกับเรื่องลูกเจ้าตัวเจ้าเนี่ยตัวรุ่นตรงแมริสันเฮาส์วิสคอนซินเขาในป่อเลยอินจีในป่อเนี่ยตัวเนี่ยน้อยว่าเนี่ยตัวเดี๋ยวรวนดับเลยเจ้าเกี่ยนะจอเนี่ยสิ่งที่เจ้าตัวส่วนเนี่ยตัวส่วนน้อเนี่ยเขาป่อเนี่ยลูกเจ้าตัวเจ้าเนี่ยตัวลูกสวิสคอนซินเราจะมาจัดตัวลิจ่าตอนช่วงเลยยาตาลอลีก็แต่ช่วงตัวเขาเลยเนาะป้าไปจำห้องเนี่ยตัวสวิสคอนซินเนาะยุโรปจะส่วนลูกลิเตียเนี่ยตัวเขาเนาะแล้วสีตอเลยก็แต่ช่วงเลยก็แต่รู้ช่วงเราจิตตัวเขียวหรือป้าโดยเป็นชนิดมองเลยอย่าเรียกเราแต่ถ้าเราแต่ก็ตัวงานเนี่ยตัวเขารู้เจสิเรียเดี๋ยวรู้เจตัวเจ้านั่นนะ